Okay, get ready, because we're going to jump into something that just might turn your whole idea of nuclear technology upside down.
Upending expectations, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're not talking about bombs or meltdowns this time.
No.
Instead, we're thinking more like cancer treatment and even things like food security and protecting wildlife.
Amazing applications.
Yeah. So are you ready to see this surprising side of nuclear power?
Always. I think it's fascinating how nuclear technology has this, kind of a heavy history.
Yeah.
But in South Africa, they're showing just how much potential it has to do good in some really innovative ways.
And that's exactly what we're looking at today.
Yeah.
Our source material is a video all about how South Africa is really leading the charge when it comes to using nuclear technology for peaceful purposes.
Yeah.
And they're doing some seriously cutting-edge stuff.
Absolutely.
So we're going to dig into how they're revolutionizing cancer treatment, tackling food security, and even helping in the fight against poaching.
I think this whole shift from weapons to wellness is a really powerful story about how science and how people see it can actually change over time.
Yeah.
Like take the Palindaba facility, for example. It used to be all about nuclear weapons development.
Right.
But now it's home to this really cool project called the Nuclear Medicine Research Infrastructure Project.
NUMERI.
NUMERI, exactly.
Okay.
Catchy name.
So let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
They're doing some really groundbreaking work using nuclear science to fight cancer. And the video features a patient named Douglas Maeni, who was part of one of their clinical trials for prostate cancer.
Right.
And they were using radioactive isotopes.
Yes. And what I think is especially interesting is the role South Africa plays in actually producing these isotopes. Did you know that they're a major supplier for the whole world?
Wow, really?
Yeah, exporting something like 20% of the world's nuclear medicine isotopes.
20%, that's huge.
That's a big deal.
So they're not just using this technology within South Africa. They're actually helping people all over the world to fight cancer.
Exactly. It's a global effort.
Which I'm guessing probably brings in some pretty significant economic benefits, too.
Oh, absolutely. It's a big industry for South Africa, and it puts them in a leading position in the field.
Right.
But beyond just the money, I think it shows how committed they are to global health and to making sure that nuclear technology is used for good.
Okay, so back to NUMERI and Douglas's story.
Yeah.
They were using those radioactive isotopes to target cancer cells directly, is that right?
That's it. That's what makes these treatments so remarkable, is how precise they are. They can attach these isotopes to molecules that are basically drawn to cancer cells like magnets. Imagine like a tiny guided missile zeroing in on the tumor and delivering a super focused dose of radiation.
So instead of affecting healthy tissue, it's more like a surgical strike against the cancer itself.
Exactly.
What stood out to you about Douglas's experience in the trial?
Well, his cancer was pretty advanced, and at first the outlook wasn't good. But after this targeted treatment, his cancer markers went down dramatically. It shows how much potential this technology has. And it's not just about living longer. It's about having a better quality of life while you're going through treatment. Minimizing those horrible side effects that come with traditional methods like chemotherapy and radiation.
That's a big difference. I remember from the video they were using these isotope-infused glucose solutions.
Yeah.
So they're basically tricking the cancer cells with this, like, delicious but deadly treat.
Uh-huh. That's one way to put it. Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more about how that works?
Yeah. Cancer cells are basically sugar fiends. They need a ton of glucose to grow and divide. So by attaching those radioactive isotopes to glucose molecules, you're giving them something they can't resist. The cells think they're getting this big energy boost, but they're also swallowing those radioactive isotopes.
Like a little Trojan horse.
Right, it's a sneaky trick.
So how exactly does it kill the cancer cells once those isotopes are inside?
Well, once they're in there, the isotopes decay and release their targeted radiation. And that damages the cell's DNA.
Okay.
And this either kills the cell completely or, and this is the best case scenario, it stops it from dividing and spreading. That's the beauty of this targeted approach. It's like using a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer. It puts the radiation right where it needs to go.
So fewer side effects, faster recovery times, and potentially better outcomes for patients.
It's looking that way.
This seems like a huge step forward in how we treat cancer.
I think so too. And the fact that the South African government is investing so much in NUMERI shows how much they believe in this technology.
Yeah.
Not just for treating cancer, but for other things too, like food security and even anti-poaching efforts.
No, hold on. Food security and anti-poaching. nuclear technology seems like a pretty unlikely solution in those
I
areas.
know, it's surprising.
What exactly are they doing there?
Well, for food security, they're using radiation to get rid of pests that damage crops. And this helps to produce more food and means they don't have to rely on harmful pesticides. It's called the sterile insect technique.
Sterile insect technique. I'm definitely intrigued. Can you give us a quick overview of how that works?
Sure, so picture this. Scientists raise a ton of male insects in a controlled lab setting. And then they expose these males to a carefully measured dose of radiation. This makes them sterile, but doesn't affect their ability to mate.
Okay, got it. So we have all these sterile but otherwise healthy male insects. Then what?
Well, then they release these sterile guys out into the wild where they compete with the wild males to mate with the females.
Okay.
And since they're sterile, no babies are produced. Over time, this brings down the entire pest population, which protects the crops without harming the environment.
That's brilliant. It's like they're turning nuclear technology into this very eco-friendly form of pest control.
Exactly.
But what about the anti-poaching side of things? How does nuclear technology fit into that?
One of the techniques they use is called isotopic analysis. It basically analyzes the unique fingerprint of different isotopes in a sample, like, say, elephant ivory.
Okay.
And these isotopic ratios can tell us where that elephant lived based on things like the local geology, rainfall, and the plants in the area.
So it's like a geographical fingerprint for the ivory.
You got it. It helps them pinpoint where it came from,
Right.
which is super valuable for conservation. It helps them figure out poaching hotspots, track smuggling routes, and even make stronger legal cases against poachers.
So they're basically giving a voice to the elephants who can't speak for themselves.
It's a powerful tool.
But how well does this isotopic analysis actually work in real anti-poaching efforts?
It's definitely effective, but there are some challenges. Like, the accuracy depends on having a really good database of isotopic signatures from different regions. And of course, you need to actually collect and analyze the samples, which can be a bit tricky logistically.
So it's not a perfect solution,
Right.
but it's still a valuable tool in the fight against poaching.
Absolutely. It's one piece of the puzzle, but it's an important one. And it just goes to show how versatile nuclear technology can be. You know, it can be used for so many different things, from healthcare to conservation.
This has already been such an eye-opening conversation. It's amazing to see how South Africa is taking something that's often associated with fear and destruction and turning it into a force for good.
It really is. And we're only just scratching the surface. There's so much more to explore in terms of how South Africa is using nuclear technology, their dedication to innovation, and their belief in the power of science to solve some of the world's biggest challenges is amazing.
I'm hooked already. I want to dive deeper into this targeted cancer treatment approach and see how it actually works. I'm really curious about the role of glucose and those isotopes.
That's a great next step. It's a pretty fascinating approach, and it's really changing how we think about treating cancer. You're about to hear about it from a patient's perspective. So imagine, you're a patient and you just got diagnosed with cancer. It's scary, it's uncertain, and you're facing some pretty tough treatment decisions.
Right.
Now, picture this. Instead of surgery or chemo or radiation, you're offered a drink.
A drink. That doesn't sound like any cancer treatment I've ever heard of.
Yeah, it might sound strange, but this is one of the really amazing ways that South Africa is using nuclear technology to fight cancer.
Wow.
Remember those isotope-infused glucose solutions we talked about?
Yeah.
That's the drink.
Okay, so they're actually giving patients a drink that has radioactive isotopes in it.
Yeah, but it's all super carefully calculated and controlled.
Right.
The isotopes are attached to glucose molecules, and like we talked about, cancer cells just love glucose. It's their fuel.
Right.
So by giving them the solution, it's like giving them this targeted energy boost, but with a little hidden surprise.
Yeah. So the cancer cells are tricked into taking in these radioactive isotopes.
Exactly.
That's pretty clever. But how do they make sure that healthy cells aren't affected by the radiation?
Good question. I mean, wouldn't those healthy cells also be consuming glucose?
Yeah.
That's where the precision of this whole thing comes in. The isotopes are chosen very specifically for the type and intensity of radiation that they emit.
Okay.
And the radiation has a really short range, meaning it mostly affects the cells that have absorbed it, those hungry cancer cells.
Oh, I see. So it's delivering this very localized dose of radiation and minimizing the impact on surrounding tissues.
It's got it.
That's very different from traditional radiation therapy, which can affect a much wider area and cause those really debilitating side effects.
Huge difference. Traditional radiation is like using a floodlight. This is more like a laser pointer. It focuses the energy exactly where it's needed.
Right.
So you have less damage to healthy cells, fewer side effects, and a better overall experience for the patient.
It sounds like it could be a real game changer.
Yeah.
Not just for cancer, but maybe for other diseases too.
It definitely has the potential. And South Africa is really at the forefront of this research, pushing those boundaries and showing what's possible.
It's really incredible how they've shifted the narrative around nuclear power. It's gone from being this source of fear and anxiety to being a symbol of hope and healing.
A complete transformation.
But before we get too carried away with the medical breakthroughs, I'd like to go back to those other applications we talked about.
Sure.
Food security and anti-poaching.
Yeah, those are fascinating areas.
We talked briefly about that sterile insect technique.
Right, or SIT.
SIT.
Yeah.
Which is being used to fight those pests that can damage crops.
Right.
I would be really fascinated by that. It seemed almost too simple to actually work.
Okay, no.
But you're saying that by releasing these sterile male insects into the wild, they can actually control the population of these harmful pests.
It's a surprisingly effective strategy. Remember, these sterile males can still mate with wild females.
Right.
But they can't reproduce.
Yeah.
So no offspring. And over time, that leads to a decline in the pest population.
So it's a more gradual approach to pest control compared to using pesticides, which have those immediate but often harmful effects.
It's a gentler approach.
What types of pests are they targeting with this technique?
Oh, all sorts. Fruit flies, moths, weevils, even mosquitoes. In fact, SIT has been super successful in controlling mosquito populations.
Really?
Yeah, which is huge for preventing the spread of diseases like malaria and dengue fever.
Wow. So they're not just protecting crops, but potentially saving lives by controlling these disease-carrying insects.
A double win.
That's really amazing. It seems like a total win-win situation. Speaking of ingenuity, what about those anti-poaching efforts?
Yeah.
We talked about isotopic analysis, but I'm still not quite clear on how that actually works in practice.
Okay, so let's say there's been a seizure of illegal ivory.
Right.
To figure out where it came from, they can use isotopic analysis.
Okay.
Every region has this unique isotopic fingerprint, right?
Correct.
Based on things like the geology, the rainfall patterns, and the types of plants that grow there.
So it's like this geographic signature embedded within the ivory itself.
Exactly. And by analyzing the ratios of different isotopes in that ivory sample, scientists can compare it to a database of known isotopic signatures
Okay.
from different elephant populations all across Africa.
So if they get a match, they can pinpoint where that ivory came from,
Yep.
potentially leading them back to the poachers or the trafficking routes.
It's a powerful tool for investigators and conservationists. Helps them track the movement of illegal wildlife products,
Wow.
identify poaching hotspots, and really understand how big this problem is.
It's like they're using science to give a voice to these elephants.
It's pretty amazing.
But are there any limitations to this isotopic analysis? Can it be used for other types of wildlife products besides ivory?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just for ivory. It can be used to trace the origin of rhino horn, pangolin scales, even timber.
Really?
The key is having a really comprehensive database of those isotopic signatures for different species and regions. And of course, the accuracy depends on things like how old the sample is, how well it's been preserved, things like that.
So it's a pretty involved process, but it seems like the benefits for conservation could be huge.
Really huge. It's like they're using the very atoms within these animals to help protect them.
That's such a great way to put it. It really shows how interconnected science and nature are, how we can use our understanding of the natural world to protect it.
Absolutely.
This has been such a fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
We've seen how South Africa is really pushing the limits with nuclear technology, not just in medicine, but in agriculture and conservation too.
And what's even more exciting is that they're not keeping these advancements to themselves. They're working with other countries to share their knowledge and promote peaceful uses for nuclear technology.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener? We really hope this deep dive has changed how you think about nuclear technology and that it's opened your eyes to what it can really do. South Africa is a great example of how we can use this technology for good.
Yeah, it's a real beacon of hope and a testament to human ingenuity.
And if this conversation has sparked your interest, we encourage you to go learn more about the work being done at NUMERI
Yeah.
and explore all the different ways that scientists are using nuclear technology to make the world a better, healthier, and more sustainable place.
Because what we've learned today is that the future of nuclear technology isn't about fear and destruction. It's about innovation and working together and this shared commitment to solving some of humanity's toughest challenges.
Absolutely. And with that in mind, we'll leave you with one final thought. If nuclear technology can be used to fight cancer with something as simple as a drink, to protect crops from pests, and to track the movements of endangered animals, what other seemingly impossible problems might it help us solve in the future?
The possibilities are truly endless. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the wonders of our world.
You mentioned before that there was something surprising about how they actually give these treatments to patients.
Oh, right.
I'm curious, tell me more.
Well, so picture this. You walk into the treatment center, probably a bit nervous, not really sure what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But instead of going into some room full of intimidating machines and stuff, you're offered a drink.
Wait, are you serious? They just give the patients a drink.
It's not just any drink. It's that same isotope-infused glucose solution we've been talking about. Remember?
Right, with the cancer cells that love glucose.
Exactly. They gobble it right up, and they get those targeted isotopes along with it.
So the whole treatment is just drinking this specially made beverage. It seems almost too simple.
It might sound a bit strange, but it really works. And because the radiation is so focused, you don't get those horrible side effects you often see with other treatments.
That's amazing. It's like they took this really complicated technology and made it really simple for the patient, maybe even, kind of enjoyable.
I know, right?
No more spending hours hooked up to machines. No more feeling sick or tired all the time.
Exactly. It lets patients live their lives and focus on getting better. It really changes the whole experience for them.
This has been such an incredible conversation.
It has.
We've seen how South Africa is pushing the boundaries of what's possible with nuclear technology. But they're not just doing it for the science. They're doing it to make a real difference in people's lives.
That's what makes their work so inspiring. They're committed to using this technology for good, whether it's treating cancer, protecting crops, or helping endangered species.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We hope this deep dive has made you think differently about nuclear technology and shown you just how much potential it really has.
We really do. South Africa is setting a great example of how this technology can be used for peaceful purposes.
Their work gives us a lot of hope and shows what we can achieve with human ingenuity. If this conversation has made you curious to learn more, we encourage you to look into the work being done at NUMERI and explore all the other amazing ways that scientists are using nuclear technology to make the world a better, healthier, and more sustainable place. Because as we've seen today, the future of nuclear technology isn't about fear and destruction. It's about innovation, collaboration, and working together to solve some of humanity's biggest problems.
True.
And with that in mind, we'll leave you with this final thought. If nuclear technology can be used to treat cancer with something as simple as a drink, to protect crops from pests, and to track endangered animals, what other seemingly impossible problems could it help us solve in the future?
The possibilities are truly endless. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the wonders of our world.